Welcome back, Steeler fans, to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith of Smoking on the Message Boards, joined by the best Steelers colleagues money can't find. Corey Karbowski, you know him as Corey39, and Will Masek, you know him as Bradshaw and Ben. Gentlemen, coming off another win. Oh, what's
We have to talk about our sponsor for a second.
what's our sponsor? Fresh Cut.
Today, it's once again, it's the Peak Brewing Company, but this is Fresh Cut. What does this say? It's a dry hopped Pilsner. So we're going to the Pilsner this week.
All right.
Very exciting. We should all. I need to raise the show's budget so that I can send you all. I'll send Corey home with a few this weekend.
Nice. Well, we went to the West Coast and we got a win. They brought some beer, some champagne back on the plane. I don't know if that.
Hey man, they beat the Raiders this year, which never happens, and they won on the West Coast, which never happens. Next, they'll beat the Jaguars. You know, that's like the three big. That's like the Mount Rushmore of
impossible teams to beat. Yeah. For if you're a Steelers fan. But yeah, so I don't know if I'd call it a nice victory, but a win's a win. Definitely not the prettiest game. I don't know what it is. Maybe our alarm clock doesn't go off till the fourth quarter until we're like, hey, oh, that's right. We're at the stadium. Let's start playing some football again. But got to give it up to our edge rushing duo again, TJ Watt. I mean, what more can you say about the guy? Dropping back into coverage, almost returned that for a touchdown. Honestly, I thought it was going to go live, but just incredible game from those guys again. Not so much from the run defense. We let a guy literally come off the couch from like 4 days ago and run all over us.
Somebody predicted that.
Yep. Right. So it's like, wish the run defense was a little better. Joey Porter continues to play better as the year goes on. Offense looked good in the fourth quarter again. I don't know why we wait so late in the games to get things going, but Corey, let's start over you. What are some of your thoughts from this past game?
I was just, for the most part, I think not the island of misfit toys, but a lot of the people that the people like to criticize Mike Tomlin for, I think those guys actually played a pretty solid game. Dan Moore looked like he played a pretty damn good game. Montravius Adams, I know he's not discussed that often, but there's been some steam with Keanu Ben. Montravius Adams played a pretty damn good game. And we didn't see Levi Wallace as much running behind receivers. That's a bit more Patrick Peterson this week. So, not saying Levi Wallace had a good game because there were still some catches, but it wasn't as bad as the other one. So it just seemed kind of one of those games where, maybe he feels a little justified in playing a lot of these guys. But, it's kind of a TJ Watt big turnover. They missed 2 field goals. Just, I don't mean to be a downer. It was a nice win, but it just feels like it's not that sustainable to win that way throughout a 17-week season. But, we seem to pull out 9, every year. So that seems to be enough. So maybe that's all
the benchmark. That's the benchmark, Corey. If we go above that, why would we do that? We raise the bar a little bit. Standard's the standard, man.
They're going to want to be winning 10 every year after that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's really unsustainable. So, Will, what are some of your thoughts from this past one?
Oh, I mean, it's the rope-a-dope strategy, right? It's like maybe I have no other explanation. I think to a certain degree that a defense sees what you're doing for 3 quarters and is like, okay, we got this, no problem. And then you come out in the fourth quarter and you're like a different team. Maybe that's the kind of something that's difficult to adjust to on the fly a little bit. But I think I'll say that both the Rams and the Ravens, I thought, played defense in the last quarter as if they didn't understand that George Pickens is the guy that is the main problem that you have. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever played defense. We play defense. The main thing that happens is that you spotlight somebody and you're like, okay, like this guy, where he's lined up or what he's doing or who he is compared to everybody else that they have. Like, that's the guy that's going to get the ball. Basketball, same thing, right? Hitters in baseball, you have to work around. And I think both the Rams and the Ravens have to be wondering when they look at the film study, what was the plan? because it was almost as if they were giving them George Pickens. And I just don't understand with this offense right now. That's the main thing that they get going on. There's other things that they made some good plays. Kenny Pickett played great in the fourth quarter. He did everything he was asked to do. Guys were open. He threw it to them. There was at least one throw that was a little bit of a contested throw. He made a nice throw of it. Isn't just a wide open guy because they didn't have the right coverage or whatever. So I give him full credit for all that stuff. But I also think, here's the thing. I've been saying we've all been saying this is an unsustainable way to win football games, yet they've managed to win at least 3 of them with that strategy against teams that they, probably in the circumstances, at least, 2 of those wins, they had no business winning, maybe 3. So I don't know. It's like, do we just be happy that there's a win, I guess,
Mm-hmm. And that's something I want to throw on to that with the George Pickens thing. We talked about the beginning of the year and even, some of the earlier weeks about how much of a difference it would make if he started creating more separation on his routes. It seems like lately, these last 2 weeks, he started to get more and more separation between him and the cornerback guarding him. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the level.
When you play when you play, so this last week, they're basically playing a soft cover 3 shell, where they kind of had almost like you'd have a blitz look where the linebackers were playing up and short, thinking the Steelers are going to do this quick game short that they've been doing for, 4 seasons now. And they just, when they do that, you're just leaving a guy like George Pickens. The moment that he breaks inside, he's wide open. The Steelers did the same thing with the Rams, but they were doing it in a situation in the game where, all right, we're going to give you a couple of first downs, but once we get sort of, closer to field goal range, then we're going to sort of play some different defenses and mix it up a little bit. But the Rams were doing that with essentially the game on the line in a situation where they gave that up. So yes, George Pickens definitely doing more, and at least in the fourth quarter, being utilized, doing some more stuff and getting open. I have no disagreement with you on that, but I just like I said, I wonder what their thought is. Was it just last week that they were doubling him everywhere? I mean, is it only
Well,
just
who
right?
we got back?
Yeah, Deontay Johnson. Well, there's the thing to talk about.
Yep. And I'm going to take this over because I wanted to bring those 2 up specifically. Boy, it was sure nice to, play a game where you have 2 guys on the outside that can actually make plays. I think that was a big part, especially in the fourth quarter. It just seemed like things opened up in the middle. I got to give credit to someone on the board. I think it was Jizz Mop. He said the middle of the field is our Bermuda Triangle. We go there, we lose things. But when we needed the most, it felt like we found something in the Bermuda Triangle, the middle of the field or whatever. But for as much heaps of praise I want to put on these two are bugging the shit out of me right now. I do not understand what it is about these 2 guys that think they can just taunt and get all the unsportsmanlike calls they could ever want. It's infuriating that these 2 just won't shut up and play football. I've never, I didn't play on a team with a ton of great talent or anything. I don't know if you guys have or whatever, but it's like, oh my God, if we could the game would have been over so much sooner if we just would have not gotten stupid penalties. I just don't understand the mindset of these 2 guys.
Sorry, what do you say? Would you say 90? What percentage of wide receivers are divas? 90? What would you say?
It's got to be 90. Here's what I want to say. I'm not going to throw any guys from my local high school under the bus, but I do a lot of scouting for my dad, and that's I look at the film, I let him know what I see, and when I look at my high school's film, we don't have anyone that gets open. And I'm talking to my dad on the phone. I'm like, man, I don't care if they want to dance. I don't care if they want to do whatever the hell they want. You just got to get some damn receivers who can get open in there. So I guess I'm going to be a little counter to Jeremy. Would it be nice if they didn't have the penalties? Yeah. But sometimes to have Deontay Johnson and George Pickens level receivers, you've got to deal with the Deontay Johnson and George Pickens level attitude. It's kind of like why you deal with Antonio Brown all those years when apparently what was going on behind the scenes was ridiculous. But would it be nice if they didn't do it? Yeah. Would it be nice if every receiver wasn't taunting, wasn't doing all this stuff? Yeah. And I'm sure there's some examples across the league of good receivers who don't taunt. But to get those level of receivers, sometimes you got to deal with shit like that.
I mean, I also think the relationship is not just completely just for no reason. I think you have to have this in order to succeed at that kind of a job at that level. You have to have this level of confidence, Teflon, that
beat the man across from you.
Yeah, that you're always going to win, and that even when you're not open, you're open, and you make a play on every ball. And it's like this. It's sort of. I think they almost have to like work themselves up to that level of hair trigger in order to be able to succeed at that level. Now, not everybody, but
I will go back and I will agree with Jeremy in the sense that if it continues to happen, it's going to be a problem. Where you get 1 week, maybe 1 or 2 penalties where you're like, okay, like we understand you're animated, you love the game, but what if it starts happening on a repeated basis where next week we see 1 or 2 and then the week following, that's when it's going to be a larger issue.
I mean, it's good to have the teaching moment in a game you won. That's what I always say. I'd rather learn more. Let's learn more from the games that we win rather than only learning when we make mistakes that cause us to lose.
That's like the Marco Wilson shoe toss in that Florida game.
Yeah, I remember
that one. Oh my God, that was the worst.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Luckily, we come out with the win. Like you said, it's a teaching moment in a win. But if one of those turns around and is a focal reason, because it happened late in the game too. It happened when we're trying to either get the lead or sustain the lead. So it's like it's in the fourth quarter where the game is on the line. It just screams like lack of situational awareness that it's like, guys, we're trying to end the game here. Deontay Johnson gets a penalty that prolongs the game. George Pickens could have been in a similar spot. I mean, I know the DJ one happened last, so that's the one we think of the most when it's like, oh, that could have really might have changed the direction of the fourth quarter. I don't know. I guess just coming from the coach of a son, that shit drives me insane. Just, it's like, because I don't trash talk. They're clearly good. I don't mind if people trash talk, but you have to know when to shut it off so you don't get penalized for it.
Wait. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. You tell me that you're both coaches' sons. Is that what the story is here? Can you guys like pinky shake like across the video? Yeah, no wonder I feel like I'm outnumbered every week. All right,
my dad coached basketball. It wasn't football, so
but your dad was Bob Knight. I don't know if everybody knows, but Jeremy's father. Yeah.
Oh God, no. No. I don't think he ever had a temper that bad. But hey, don't defame Bobby Knight in the state of Michigan. That's like hearsay.
I will say about that Deontay one before we move off it. I think that was a pretty damn soft call.
But I mean, he's shushing the guy right to his face, essentially.
Yeah, but that felt like a makeup call to me. That's the you know that the previous call maybe wasn't that good, but the laundry's already on the ground, and so you're like, how can we get out of this? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well, the replay, that's bad.
Yeah. I mean, we kill the refs the game anyway. I mean, thank you for that extra yard on 4th down.
Oh my God, I would say, I'm going to put that top 10 worst officiating calls I think I've ever seen, and that's a high bar. There's been some really, really bad ones, but that was like the situation in the game and just how bad it was and how obvious it was. The fact that they have I've been saying this on Twitter this week. Every professional league, let alone every professional football league that exists other than the NFL, they have an eye in the sky. They have somebody looking over everything who, without any bunch of fanfare, don't have to stop the game, don't have to bring the on-field officials over to a monitor. They just correct any egregious mistakes and they move on. And everybody, it seems to work fine everywhere else. The NFL has this situation because they want it this way. They want to have the little controversy and a little bit of something for people to talk about and be angry about, whatever. So
they still measure the downs with 2 sticks and a down marker. Like,
I mean, I said this. I mean, I know I've told. I'm sure I've said this on the show before, but my brother-in-law was involved with the technology. If you ever see America's Cup and there's a line across the ocean, And this was the first thing that was this like a measuring line. So you could, when you're looking at a boat in the ocean on television, you have no idea. So that made it watchable to see, oh, this is the line they're shooting after, and you can see it on here. And then that became the first down line that you see projected onto the screen for NFL games, right? Or for football games, which is now ubiquitous. It's everywhere. That technology, and the same team that built that technology, they pitched to the NFL the idea of having, geolocation for the ball, so they know where the ball is at all times, and project that onto the field. They would know exactly where the ball was at any given moment in time. And you could even have, I mean, this is my add-on thing that I mentioned to them when they were in talks with the NFL doing it. I was like, most of these fields are, have fibers. Even the grass fields have artificial fibers built into the ground, or they have heating elements underneath it or whatever. It's like, hey, put some fiber optic all through the field and just have it light up where the spot is. You don't even have to have like a conversation. It's like you could literally see this is where the ball goes, and you set it down and you move on. And this whole thing about this antiquated idea that some middle-aged guy, guys my age or older are like running from the sideline.
Middle age?
Shots fired. Damn, Corey. We just lost our other host for the evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what we do here. Oh no!
Anyway, you got some blind guys, who are put in a very difficult situation, especially the way the NFL does things. They, if you're at lower levels, you go to a high school game, for instance, the mechanics are different. You are going to go straight to where the ball is in a scrum and mark it. In the NFL, they're trying to make all of these spots from the sideline to speed up the process of getting the ball reset for the next play. So you have guys sometimes, the field's 50 yards wide. You have guys 25 yards away. That's 75 feet away from the action, who are going to try to make a determination about things without the benefit of the, painted or a electronic line that we see on the broadcast. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. And stuff like yesterday is Sunday is only noticeable because it was on a fourth down at a critical point in the game. But I would argue that that's 10 or 15 times a game. There's spots that I look at as somebody who was responsible for the spot, for 15 years of doing it. It's so egregious that it doesn't, I can't even unsee it. I just think to myself, like, this spot is so bad. I guess it doesn't matter. I've come to the conclusion over time that a little bit of difference in the spot and a non-crucial play doesn't really matter all that much. But I feel like when you're playing ball, you want every inch. It matters a lot to you when you're playing. And that was always the thought that I had when I was officiating, is that you're there to make it fair because the players are trying so hard, I don't know. I don't get it.
Especially like in the NFL, livelihoods are on the line too, where, yardage sometimes is, that escalator in your contract. Hey, I'm going to hit 700 receiving yards if I'm a tight end. You would hate to be that 1 yard short and be like, no, I had it, but the technology isn't there to tell me you got it. But that'd be interesting. Like you said, 2 men and a stick, gotta love it.
2 men and a stick, exactly.
But a win's a win. So let's kind of move on and get on to the Jaguars game that's coming up this weekend. Let's kind of talk up some matchups here. First one, I'm going to note, got to block Josh Allen this week, guys. He's on an absolute tear this year. He's got 7 sacks through, I think it's 6 games. I think Jacksonville's already had their bye. Could be wrong. If not, it's even more impressive. It's either 7 through 6 or 7 through 7. So, Dan Moore, Chooks, they got to be ready for him. He is a one-man wrecking crew right now for this Jacksonville team. So, Will, let's swing it to you. What are some other matchups we should be looking out for this week?
Well, just in general, I just feel like this is a hot team. It's I was really impressed with their win Thursday night because they were a road team. And as I mentioned, they played in London for 2 weeks, and then they came back and played in Jacksonville, and then played on a short week in wherever they were that was not in Jacksonville on Thursday night. Where did they play?
They were
New
there in
Orleans.
New Orleans.
Oh yeah, New Orleans. So yeah, granted.
How do you pronounce that, Jeremy?
Huh?
How'd you pronounce that?
They're in New Orleans.
Okay.
New Orleans. Oh my
New
goodness.
Orleans.
Whatever.
Who that?
Whatever. Next time I'll say the Saints so I don't get bashed on
Okay.
how I say New Orleans.
Well,
Orleans.
as our resident Louisiana resident, you want to give him a heads up?
He was going to correct me no matter what.
I haven't heard that in years.
Okay, well, that's how us Northerners say it. Maybe
No.
sometime, I don't know.
Corey's making a point of this because this is how he pronounced it when he moved there.
It was.
Beat it out of him.
Yeah.
New Orleans.
Yeah, Nolans. Yeah.
Anyway, no, I was impressed. I was impressed by what they did. So to me, the matchup is, the Steelers with their way of, like I said, rope-a-dope. You guys are too young to remember rope-a-dope, but Muhammad Ali pretty much developed this concept that he would just let the other team get it sort of tired of itself, tired of, the other opponent get tired of himself and wear himself out, and like feel like he had a commanding lead in the points, and then Muhammad Ali at the towards the end of the fight would just sort of like come alive all of a sudden and would just knock the guy for a loop. Not necessarily always knock him out, but it was just like some point he would just like become a different fighter towards the end and to be fresher. So that's why I'm calling it the rope-a-dope strategy for those of you under the age of 60. But the to me the matchup is, will their strategy work against a team that's hot? I think Jacksonville's arguably playing as well as anybody right now. Maybe the Chiefs, have an argument for being hot right now, but Jacksonville is kind of like the things. They had some ready-made excuses to be able to take a game or two off like they generally do every year, and right now they look like they're rolling. Like I don't know how much confidence I have. I guess if I had to come up with a specific matchup, I would say their quarterback isn't necessarily like the, running the league like people thought he would be by this point in his career, but I think he's a pretty good fit for what they're trying to do. Kind of like, the Steelers situation, but better. I'm interested to see how the Steelers manage taking away things that Trevor Lawrence likes to do.
Corey, what do you think we should be on the lookout for matchup-wise this week?
I mean, just all their weapons in general. Like all their weapons are route winners. It's kind of how I'd put it, where Evan Ingram will win against the linebacker. Travis Etienne will win against the linebacker. The Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, those guys will win on the outside. So that's, you could call it their weapons versus our defenders. But I mean, we could say this one every week, so I try not to. But if TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith make life tough on Trevor Lawrence, that negates a lot of those problems. I mean, that's just kind of the bottom line is, can you hold off Highsmith and Watt enough to get about 20 points on the board? And if you get that, you're probably beating the Steelers. So we know we don't have the guys in the defensive backfield and just across the board to cover a lot of these weapons. But, we have so much invested in those two edge rushers for good reason that, I mean, they're paid to not let it get that far. So I'll just kind of sit in between those two, our, Highsmith and Watt versus their tackles and whoever else they decide to throw at them, and their receivers, tight ends, running backs versus our coverage players, as I'll put it.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I mean, that's fair. Honestly, I was gonna say, the wide receivers in general would give us fits this week just because they're big, they're explosive guys, and those are the guys we generally have a lot of tough time staying in time with. But really, Travis Etienne has been running like a man possessed this year. His speed, I was gonna say, in general, their offensive speed worries the shit out of me just because they are all so dang fast. They're all so dang quick. I worry about, our linebackers, either getting up in time to get to Etienne because one bad angle and that kid's beat you to the corner. And once he beats you to the corner, he can take it off for the whole field. I feel like this is a get right game for Calvin Ridley too. Like, I think he had one catch for 5 yards last week. Thanks a lot, asshole. You're on my fantasy team. Oh, I always manage to work in. I'm pissed off about some fantasy player every week, so I felt like it was my duty to bring that up anyway. but just in general, their team speed, I think could be a big game time, big thing for the Steelers to contain this week. Any other matchups that we should be on the lookout for, gentlemen? Will, looks like you got another one.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Well, to tag onto your Travis Etienne bit, I feel like the right side of the Jaguars line with Brandon Sheriff and Anton Harrison, I feel like that you can bottle up a guy like Travis Etienne the entire game. It's like Willie Parker. It's like he could have a 2-3 yard gain for 5 or 6 plays in a row and then break a 20-yarder or a 50-yarder, right? So to me, it's the sort of consistency that they're going to be able to play run defense with. They haven't shown a lot of that kind of discipline, and I fear that like if they got the running room that the Rams got last week, the Jacksonville's able to make a lot more hay out of that than the Rams were able to. I guess is what I'm saying. So
yeah, you literally just stole what I was about to say. If we can let Darrell Henderson come off a couch
and Royce Freeman.
What?
And Royce Freeman.
And, if we can let 2 guys off the couch 4 days before they play and run like they did last week, I really don't want to see what ETN can do when he's been, running well all season.
2 touchdowns for a game, I think, for the past 4 games or something like that.
Yeah, for the past 3, I think. It's the first time over a 3-game span a running back's been able to do that or something like that. 6 rushing touchdowns too. It's not receiving work. So I don't think it's been done ever or in like a very long time. So that they are just like you said, well, this is a team that's playing extremely well. So if we're not on our A game, we're going to know about it pretty quick.
And Corey, you got to say something about the defense. I know Josh Allen's been mentioned, but I actually have been very impressed with Jacksonville's defense. They have top 5 defense maybe in the league. So this is unusual for them. They haven't always had it playing this well. How would you add to that conversation?
Yeah, people talk a lot about Aiden Hutchinson. He's a really good player. Trayvon Walker catches a lot of slack. That's a byproduct of Hutchinson kind of being the flashier player. Trayvon Walker's been playing some good football. He's not a guy who shows up all the time on the stat sheet because he's a 3 tech. I mean, how often do you see Cam Hayward lighting up the stat sheet? Yeah. But Trayvon Walker could give, Mason Cole played well last week, probably his first good game of the year. But if they decide to throw Trayvon Walker down in the 0 or the 1 and some, sub looks, that could be a big time problem. I think that he's very disruptive, even if he's not making a lot of the plays himself. So that's kind of one guy who I'd be a little concerned about, just depending on where he lines up.
Yeah, I'll mention one more name because it would be almost criminal not for us to bring up his name. Foyed Olukun. I think I pronounced that right.
You did.
But the dude is just an absolute animal. For all the talk of the Fred Warners and the Shaquille Leonards and the Roquan Smiths, this guy should be a household name, and he isn't. It's ridiculous. This guy.
Well, his name is Foyed Olukun. That's why it's not a household name, my friend.
Fair enough, but I mean, like he is the reason the Jacksonville defense is so good. He is left to able to run and cover no matter what. He's covered, he just finds his way to the ball. Pick six last week. He makes plays in coverage. He makes plays in the run. The dude's just incredibly fast. That's a guy I think, could be an absolute wrecker, for the Steelers game plan this week, for especially how some of our run-ins develop so slowly, and Najee's not a fast linebacker. Jalen Warren might be the only guy, that can outrun him to a corner.
Can I just say, you want to talk about drafting? Like Jacksonville is a team every year that I feel like they don't always draft like all the guys that I would have taken in the spots, but in general, they seem to end up with maybe more guys that I really liked as prospects. But just, this is the benefit of being really bad for a few years, man. Their defense alone, in the last 3 years, they've added Devin Lloyd, Trayvon Walker, Andre Cisco, who's been terrific at safety.
Been really good.
Buster Brown, Antonio Johnson, who's been contributing a little bit, Chad Muma, and then they added Tyler Lacey. Like they're they're actually they have and Yasser Abdullah, like they literally like have added some really good players in the draft and in free agency. They loaded up their defense in a way that, for all I think the Steelers defense, their stars rightly get a lot of hype, but it's like the guys who aren't the stars on the Steelers defense aren't necessarily like worth writing home about. Feel top to bottom, this defense is very impressive to me. So I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing if what we saw in the fourth quarter, if you can duplicate that kind of or replicate that kind of production against a defense like this would really impress me.
Well, last thing I'll say on the defense before we move on and pick some NFL games here. The one thing that's impressive about the Jaguars defense is they're all young and they're all hungry. I think like the oldest guy on that defensive unit in general is like Adam Ghostis, who's I think might be 30. I don't even know if he's 30 yet. If he is, he's just teetering on that mark. So I mean, they're all young, they're all hungry, they all get after it. It's a total mentality that defense has, which is why they've really rounded the corner here.
Yep, 31 he is.
Right. But with that being said, there is some other NFL action this week now, and I wanted to ask this because I think this might be the first time I've seen this in an NFL schedule. There was no one on bye in week 8. Everyone's playing in week 8. I don't know. Maybe that's just how the 17 game schedule works out this year, compared to past years. But I don't think I've ever seen the NFL have a week during the middle of the year where one team's not on bye. Every team is playing this week. It astounded me or whatever. When
I thought I was just lucky in fantasy.
Right? Yeah, no buys to dodge, right? But
by the way, so you can look forward to it. Week 12 also has nobody on the bye.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well,
plan ahead. Plan accordingly for your fantasy team.
Yeah, right. Plan accordingly. But there are some big games this weekend. Kind of one of the bigger ones is Buccaneers are traveling up to Buffalo. Right now, the Bills are favored by 8.5. What felt like the Buccaneers might look like they might look to start to run away with that division. Things are getting a lot more cloudier now with Atlanta winning a few. The Saints, kind of battling. That's become a much more contentious division here as we venture more into the middle of the year. And Bills they came off a real stinker against New England. I mean, who would have thought New England would just pretty much outplay them the entire day? So, like I said, the Bills are favored by 8.5 at home. Corey, I'll let you start off with this one.
This is a Thursday night game, right?
Yes, this is our Thursday night matchup. Good. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, I feel like the Bills are typically, they play pretty well at home. The Patriots game's a weird game. There's not really anything for me to say about that. But for the Bucs, it feels like they're kind of teetering down a little. Like it feels like they're on the wrong end of a slope right now. And have to come back to a Thursday night game, even with 8.5, I'm just not a fan. I think the Bills make it a little pretty uncompetitive. So that's where I'm going to roll with the Bills to cover.
All right.
Yeah, I think the Buccaneers have their bags all packed and they're ready to take off on their voyage towards the bottom of the standings. And Buffalo is I think I read today they have the best point differential of any team in the NFL, and they're 4-3. So I wouldn't expect Buffalo to lose too many more stinkers as the year goes on and they revert to the mean a little bit. But yeah, it just feels like that Tampa Bay, was doing that thing where they were beating bad teams and they just started to fall off already. And you could just see the precipice. They're right up against the edge of the cliff. So I'll predict that much as Corey did, that the Bills win handily.
All right. I'm on the same boat. This is kind of another get right game. Get the bugaboo off our backs. That they played bad in New England. Let's face it. It's just was not their day. And until they absolutely needed it, and it was just too little, too late. Mac Jones played really well. But I think Buffalo definitely has the firepower to outplay Tampa Bay. I have Buffalo winning, but not covering. Buccaneers are kind of a sneaky team. There are weeks where they look much better, and then there's weeks that they don't. I think they find a middle ground somewhere. 8.5's a lot. I know it's a Thursday night game, but I think both ways. I just don't. I like Buffalo to win. Don't like them to cover this week. That just seems like a lot of points for me.
And I think also, the Pirates charge too much for corn. Buccaneer.
Yeah, why is the rum always gone? Oh, I mean, well, in this case, it's beer. Will, have you gone through your first one yet? Or...
Not yet. No, getting there.
All right. Well, there's
I'll crush the can against my forehead when I'm done. So
Oh, okay, gotcha. Good to know. There are a few other good games coming in this week. The Saints are headed up to Indianapolis. Indy's kind of a hard team to figure out with the Gardner Minshew thing, but they looked really good in a game that they got absolutely screwed over this past week. And honestly, that was a win. I mean, it's kind of amazing that the refs threw those flags. Oh, since we're on the topic of this, gentlemen, is there such thing as an uncatchable ball anymore? I really think that they think we can all jump like 5 feet in the air and just go get whatever we want now.
yeah, I haven't seen one called in a long time, and there have been some situations where it would have been appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, in this past weekend was one of them, but I don't want to hype on that. We're focusing on the future. This is not a Colts show, and I don't ever want it to be one. But Colts are at home. They are getting a point, so the Saints are favored by 1 heading up to Indianapolis. Will, how do you feel about this game?
There's not really anything to like about New Orleans, and Indy's got its own share of problems. I'm really, really tempted to pick the Saints only because Gardner Minshew is like spinning a roulette wheel, to try to figure out if it's going to be a good game for him or a bad game. And it feels like it's been coming up, red so many times in a row, or black so many times in a row that, do I want to play red or do I want to play black again? I don't know. Anyway, God, I guess I'll take the Colts. I feel like the Colts are a slightly more mediocre team than the Saints are. Saints are a little below mediocre. So,
all right, yeah, the battle of 2, 3, and 4 teams this week. So thought it'd be a fun little one to throw into the mix.
Pick. Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's why you led, man. Gort.
So on paper, I would be taking the Saints pretty much every time, especially with Anthony Richardson out. But I think the vibes in New Orleans are just way too bad right now. Like
in what city? Sorry,
New Orleans.
Okay, just checking.
I feel like the vibes are just way too bad there. It seems like there's a lot of animosity between some of the receivers and their quarterback, and I don't know. I just don't. Whenever you see a team with that much turmoil going on, how often do you see them come out and win the next week? That's kind of my point of view on it. I feel like they've got probably another week where they're gonna. Does anyone know if Olave's playing? Is that a thing?
Good question. Got arrested this week.
That's right.
I love the footage of the arrest. He's like, I play for the Saints, man. And the cop says, and?
No way, really? That's awesome.
Like a Marcelo Zuna from the Braves thing again. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that, but
no.
That's a pretty viral video. Okay. But I think the vibes are just too bad in New Orleans this week, so I'm gonna roll with the Colts just because of that.
Gotcha. So I'm taking the Saints, only because it doesn't feel like when Indianapolis plays a pretty good defense, that's when they're like, especially the Gardner Minshew type of quarterback, that tends to be when he typically struggles. The Saints have a very good defense still, Cam Jordan, Mario Davis, their secondary is all pretty good. I think they find a way to bottle up the offense a little bit, and Gardner Minshew is not afraid to, try some windows. He's a gunslinger, he was a gunslinger at Washington State. He's been a gunslinger in the NFL. I just think that gets him into a little bit of trouble this week. And the Saints are a team. It's funny because we were talking about them playing Jacksonville last week. It's amazing how fast that offense heated up when they just started to go fast. It's like when they like try to plan out a drive, it's like, well, we might be moving the ball, we might not. Late in the game, they did whatever they wanted. So I just think they get to a point again this week where that's the recipe to success. I think it's a close one, but I like the Saints in this one. So, few other games. One really good one out on the West Coast again. Cleveland's travels to Seattle. Seattle's a 3.5-point favorite at home. I think a lot of it is probably to deal with whether Deshaun Watson plays or doesn't, but Cleveland's looked pretty good even when he hasn't played. So I'll start off with this one. It's always tough when you travel west, and even though I'm not a big believer in the Seahawks, I feel like they're a team that's getting some things right. Kenneth Walker is starting to look pretty good. Jackson Smith and Jigba played really well in DK Metcalf's absence. I don't remember if DK is supposed to be back this week or not. I think he is, but I just think they get a little bit more done. And I don't think Watson plays this week. I don't. So I just think that ends up being kind of the difference there. So I like the Seahawks doing that one. Court?
I'm going to go with the Browns, and it is another vibes related pick, but I'm going with them because there seems to be some questionable injuries with Watson right now where the coaches think he can play, but Watson doesn't think he can play. Even with all the other stuff going on, I think this might be a chance for the universe to be like, you know what? Backup QB come in, we're going to win without you. So I'm just going to go with the Browns just as kind of like maybe it's because I want to see it. Browns backup QB come in and win and play better than him, but I'm going to roll with the Browns here.
Okay. Will, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, I in a way, their only chance to lose last week is if Watson had stayed in the game. He was absolutely hideously bad in the beginning of the game. And then when he got knocked out of the game, I texted someone, it might have been Corey, and I was like, oh, good news for the Browns. Watson appears to be out. And yeah, PJ Walker, I think, is a bit, is capable enough of playing just well enough with a great defense to continue to win games. So I'm not so afraid about that. I just feel like Seattle is a little flying under the radar. They're a very solid team. They're playing at home where they have a pretty good advantage playing. So yeah, I actually think the Browns are pretty good, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Browns ended up with a better record by the end of the year than the Steelers, for instance. But yeah, I don't think this is their week. I'll take Seattle.
Yeah, one other thing I forgot to mention about this one, like you said, playing at home in the 12-man stadium, that's always a big advantage in Seattle. But who the hell is running the ball in Cleveland right now? Chubb's out for the year.
Strong Jr.
Jerome Ford.
Well, he's out for 1 or 2 weeks.
Oh, he's out as well. What the Hunt?
Pierre Strong Jr.
Yeah, Pierre Strong.
Yeah, Pierre Strong.
Yeah, Pierre Strong and Hunt is fine and good enough with their offensive line. I mean, that's really what makes it happen.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought it was funny. I didn't realize this till after the game or whatever. But apparently, Hunt was playing through an injury too, so it's just kind of interesting to see how banged
But I'm
up.
sorry, are you allowed to come straight from FCS and be successful in the NFL? I was unclear about this. Next, you're going to tell me a guy can come from Division II and make it in the NFL.
Don't tell the Steelers that. I mean, they'll have to hire way more people. So
it's true.
But and that brings us to our 5-star matchup of the week.
Oh yeah.
Jacksonville travels up to Pittsburgh, take on the Steelers. Jacksonville is favored by 2.5. Will, do you want to start out with this one? Or Corey?
If you make me. I guess it's our show. That's what that's what we get paid to do. That's what we don't get paid to do. I put the Steelers in the scrappy camp right now. It feels like last week's win was a scrappy win. I will. I'll just say this. I believe I will pick them to win about as often as I pick them to lose for the rest of the season, provided nothing changes from here. If even if we don't learn anything more about them up or down, and there aren't any significant injuries or whatever, I'm probably going to feel like they're better than half the teams in the league, right? So they feel like a very mediocre team, but in a league where a mediocre team is a playoff contender, or a contender to get to the playoffs anyway. I just feel like this week's Jacksonville's playing too well, and they're a little bit too solid a team. They don't have like a big significant weakness to exploit. And even when they, like last week's game, you talked about your wide receiver in fantasy who had a really bad game and now is probably going to bounce back this week. I feel like Jacksonville made every mistake they could possibly make in the first half of that game on Thursday night and overcame it. So I don't think we'll see a Jacksonville implosion on Sunday. And barring a Jacksonville implosion or an absolutely superhuman day by TJ Watt. By the way, we only talked about it for a second, but the play that TJ Watt made, the interception, would have been an amazing play for Fred Warner. And for a guy who doesn't normally play in coverage and play off the ball, he basically passed off his responsibility at exactly the right time. And instead of just covering grass like so many players, or even in the NFL, or want to do, man, he made a great play on that.
Yeah.
So barring, multiple defensive scores or a big meltdown from Jacksonville, I feel like it's just a little bit too solid a team. It's a better, much better defense. And against the great defenses that they played, the Steelers offense hasn't really been able to put much together. The one big play to George Pickens against Baltimore and a lot of, feasting on other teams' mistakes against the Browns. So I'm just trying to think of the score. I don't think the Steelers will score as much as they scored last week, but let's make it a close game. Let's call it 2017 Jacksonville.
All right, Corey.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at this is, do I think the Steelers are a 5-2 team? The answer to that's going to be a no. But I could see a win here. I can't really bring myself to pick it. We're not a 5-2 team, so I'm just, you can look at the game, you can look at everything. I just think this is going to be a regression to the mean. I think we play hard. Maybe the offense, even if the offense looks like it did in the fourth quarter, I mean, that still might not be enough to beat a team like the Jags. Like they could end up being, scoring like that on their quarters too. So I'm just going to roll with the Jags. Let's call it 27-23. Maybe the offense keeps rolling a little, just doesn't end up being enough. I could see a couple explosives being more of the culprit for the 27 points than, long sustained drives, but get 27, now you get 27. So that's what I'm going to settle with.
All right. Well, I'll round it out. I almost feel like I should pick him to win, but I just can't. I was a believer in this Jacksonville team down the road last year. Started off a little bit slow, but you guys have said it, that they're a hot team right now. And I think the big difference is, we found a way to win against an immobile quarterback last week at the Stafford. Lawrence is not that dude. Lawrence runs with his feet. Even last week in New Orleans, when they were all like, oh, we told him, don't really run because you're kind of hurt. He still ran anyway, and that was a huge difference in that game. I think that alone is just going to be a big reason why the Steelers end up losing this one. His ability to run and make plays, extend plays. It's not a statue back there this week. It's a moving target. We tend to have a lot of trouble with moving targets, and Lawrence is better than Lamar Jackson when it comes to an overall game, if you ask me. I think he can throw the ball better, which makes him just a little bit more dangerous because you have to really respect his ability to throw the ball at times. I think that's the difference in the game. I have the Jags winning 27-17. I think their defense is just going to be tough for our offense to crack, even with DJ Johnson back. They're just such an incredibly solid unit, and they've got playmakers at all levels. We really tend to struggle with teams that have more than one, alpha, and it just seems like they've got a bunch of guys playing really, really well right now. So I'm going to round.
It's like which receiver gets over 100 yards this week?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's why I said, this is a get right week for Calvin Ridley because, it's like Christian Kirk went off last week. We'll either let Kirk go off the chain like we did Puka. I mean, shoot, Puka, had posted a new personal record last week. It's like which receiver gets to do that this week? Thank you. By the way, thank God Levi Wallace missed practice on today unexpectedly. We might not have to see him play. But yeah, it just has that type of a vibe to me. It's like there's going to be one guy we just can't stop. Doug Peterson's a good coach, and they're just going to keep going back to the well that gets him down the field. So that's where I think we are with this one.
Does it say something that I feel a little bit, I have just a very bad feeling about the fact that I actually picked the Steelers to get 17 points against this defense. Like, like you did too. Like I was like, well, what was I thinking when I said that? But I mean, I'm sticking with it because last week my initial prediction on the Jacksonville game would have been pretty much on the money. So
Right.
I'm going to stick with it. But it is a little frightening to think I'll be sweating it out for those 17 points.
Right. Well, and the other thing is I have projected the Steelers to lose their last 2 games. They've won their last 2 games. So I'm hoping that trend continues. Predict them to lose. They ended up surprising me. Hey, my weekend's instantly better. So with that being said, thank you, gentlemen, for hopping on another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Colmy. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the Message Boards, joined by the best colleagues Steelers can have in Corey Karbowski, Core 39, and Will Masek, as Bradshaw to Ben. Gentlemen, let's hopefully we don't hear too many Duval chants up in Pittsburgh this week. Like that would be the worst. It's like going to an IU game, and then when you play Ohio State, and by the third quarter, you're getting the OHIO chant the whole time. So let's hope that doesn't happen in Pittsburgh. So thank you very much again, gentlemen. And here we go, Steelers.
Go Steelers.